Thank you. Thank you so much. It's such a delight to be back here at DLD with old friends and new. And I'm particularly excited about this session, both because we have such brilliant speakers, but coming from New York, we like to think we're the greatest city in the world, right? We invented everything. That's what we like to think. And some of you might have heard we have a new mayor who's created quite a stir in my neck of the woods of the Upper East Side of New York. He just moved across the street into the mayor's mansion a couple of days ago from where I live. And he is rethinking capitalist economics with an eye towards equity and ecology, finding a new kind of balance. So this conversation has started, and we like to call it bagel economics, and we think we've invented this new thing. And it comes, it turns out it's not our thing. It turned out that someone else here on this stage came up with a certain kind of circular treat that describes this concept long before New York did. And so we're going to hear exactly what is Doughnut Economics, and we're going to hear, maybe with the help of a clicker and a slide, you found it, there we go. But more so your wisdom on this topic. Kate, so give us an introduction. We're going to structure our chat in the following way, because some people may not have had the opportunity to see your wonderful TED Talk on this or prior presentations. Give us a little bit of an introduction to your idea, and we'll talk a little bit through places like Amsterdam and other places that came before New York with this approach. And then we can bring the conversation into Marie's wheelhouse with investment, business, finance, and the role that maybe how we intersect with capitalism to the direction of travel that you're advocating for.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vijay, and I'm delighted to be here with you both. So I studied economics at university in the 1990s. And was profoundly frustrated because there was no clear purpose to the economy. It was just GDP growth. That is not a purpose. And we are now in the second quarter of the 21st century. We need to know where the heck we want to go with these extraordinarily accelerating technologies, the geopolitical tensions we face, the pressures on the planet. We need a compass. So I was motivated to draw one, and I think visuals really matter, right? You notice today when there are things to look at, our eyes are pattern seekers. We need to use our sight, as well as our minds and our words, to create visuals and compasses for ourselves. So this is the donut. I nearly called it the bagel. I lived 4 years in New York, and I thought it was just a little bit too insider New York, so I had to go a bit more general. This is the donut. Good news is, folks, you don't have to eat donuts. This is the only one that's healthy for you. Otherwise, the doctors will have my back. If you think of humanity's use of Earth's resources radiating out from the center of that picture, then the hole in the middle is a place where people are falling short on the essentials of life. That's where people do not have the resources every person has a claim to meet their human rights, to food, water, healthcare, education, housing, income, energy, transport. These I drew from the Sustainable Development Goals. It means the governments of the world have already agreed that every person in the world has a right not to live in that hole. So leave no one in the hole. But it's a very big 21st century but. Do not overshoot the limits of this planet. Do not put so much pressure on Earth's life-supporting systems. We kick this only living planet that we know of in the universe out of balance. So don't cause climate breakdown. Don't acidify the oceans and a hole in the ozone layer. Don't destroy the web of life. These, of course, are the 9 planetary boundaries drawn up by Earth system scientists in 2009. And so we put the two together. Leave no one in the hole. Don't overshoot Earth's limits. I wish and I believe that every economics course across the world should begin with a goal like this. It doesn't have to be exactly this one. If you disagree, great. At least we're talking about it. But let's have a stated goal, because if we don't have a vision for where we want to go, how the heck do we know what a successful policy looks like? So this I first published at Oxfam in 2012. It had way more traction than I imagined, and it was very clear quickly. Many people said, I've always thought of sustainable development a bit like this. I've never seen the picture before. And the picture is empowering because it changes the shape of progress. The shape of progress is not endless growth. It is not up through the ceiling. It's like this. In fact, I invite you, audience, do this with your hands. Just feel, right? It's inside and out. You look beautiful. It's lovely. But it's also like a heartbeat. In our own bodies, we know that our health depends on balance, enough food, water, oxygen, sunlight, but not too much of any. We thrive and live and survive because we are in balance. And if we can take what we know in the human body to the planetary body that is our best metaphorical opportunity to thrive this century.
Not just metaphorical. As you, I was stunned to see how many of you were waving your arms along. You can see that Kate's not only a brilliant thinker, but also a great ringmaster. She will be holding a circus, it's called, a Doughnut Economics circus at 5 o'clock upstairs, and where you can turn your metaphor into physical activity. And I'm sure it'll be very, very educational as well as entertaining. So I encourage you all to go check it out a little bit later in the spirit of both adventure and also education. But back to our Doughnut Economics. Now, you have to help us a little bit further in this concept here. So growth as an end in of itself is in your point of view, the wrong objective.
Absolutely.
What role does economic growth play? Because if I were just to look at this donut, again, there are still a few billion people on Earth who fall short on a number of these things, right? And that's a travesty, whether it's on nutrition or energy. We can go through the list of areas that you put up there. One of the greatest experiences in our lifetimes of success in lifting people out of poverty was China. And it was done predominantly through economic growth, maybe 700 million people. India to a lesser degree, a small number, but we have seen some significant progress in the last 30, 40 years. It was growth that was the engine. What was wrong with that?
So if we could just click to the second slide, someone magically behind the scenes will do that for us, I hope. It will show us the actual state of the world now, which is that billions of people, there we go. This was just published in Nature journal in October. Billions of people worldwide are still falling short on the essentials of life without the health, education, housing, income that every person has a claim to. And economic growth in the 20th century was a pretty damn good way of meeting those essential needs. Grow your economy, the workers get wages, they can meet their needs, you have public provisioning. So growth went along with a strong correlation to meeting people's needs. Imperfect, and huge inequalities can open up, but it was a pretty good proxy. I understand why it became seen as a good enough proxy. We are not in the 20th century anymore. We're in the 21st century. And now we have the science, we have the planetary boundaries, we have the metrics. Here's the rub. GDP growth not only can reduce poverty, it also has a very, very high correlation with pushing us beyond planetary boundaries. A very high correlation with greenhouse gas emissions, with water use, with fertilizer use, with biodiversity loss, on the way that we have run the economy till now. So growing your economy can help get people out of poverty, and simultaneously, it's been pushing us over those planetary boundaries. We need a new design. We need to flip something that the way we take our economies forward now brings us into this from both sides at the same time. What kind of economic design would serve to help meet people's needs while coming back within the means of the planet? And that is the paradigm transformation that we have the responsibility to make. Last century's theories were not designed, they never saw this, so why would we think they would solve it? Last century's government policies, last century's business designs, none of them saw this, they were not designed to solve this, and I feel very strongly that today's 18 and 19-year-olds who are signing up to study economics at university, with all the challenges we know the 21st century holds, they have the right to be taught a mindset that gives them at least half a chance of turning this around, and the textbooks they're being handed right now do not.
So if it's not the conventional notion of growth, what is it that you do advocate? And again, I think people understand, especially with your beautiful graphics, a lot of these are ecological overshoots, right? Planetary boundaries, as the scientists call them.
Yes.
But I've also heard you critique something known as green growth. So can you tell us, what do you have in mind? First of all, was that right? Is green growth problematic, or what politicians like to call green growth? And what is it instead that you would like to see?
So here's the challenge, and we're sitting here in Germany. Many of us are from high-income countries. I'm speaking right now to the high-income countries of the world.
You're the problem.
Right, I mean, New York, you're part of this, okay?
Sorry, yes.
Here's the problem. Yes, there is evidence of countries, high-income countries, that have a growing GDP and declining carbon emissions. And they're declining absolutely. The problem is policymakers are saying, oh, there's green growth, we've done it. It's like claiming it before it's... No, we have not done it. Carbon emissions are declining at around 1% to 2% per year. They need to be declining at least 5 to 8 times faster. So it's like saying this, Vijay, we are going to miss the last train home unless we sprint for it. and then you break into a slow jog, and you say, but Kate, I'm running. I'm sorry, you're not running anywhere near fast enough. We are going to miss that train. So we have to go way, way faster. There is no evidence that what's being called green growth at the moment is getting us anywhere close to the level of responsibility that we as high-income countries hold. Now, if we were talking about low-income countries, I absolutely believe their GDPs will grow.
Right.
May they do so in a totally transformed way. May they not live out the fossil and extractive designs that we've passed on. May they leapfrog all of that. But for high-income countries, we have a responsibility to deeply decarbonize far, far faster than we're doing. We have not yet seen green growth. And I've only talked about carbon emissions. When we talk about material footprints, that decoupling has barely begun.
Sure. I've also heard your ideas. Thank you. I think that's a powerful point. That your idea should not be confused with degrowth. You've also challenged those who might conflate the two ideas. Can you tell us, just for those of us who are not deeply into the economics of this, what is it that you find problematic with degrowth and conflating it with what you're advocating for?
Actually, the main thing I find problematic with degrowth is the word itself creates confusion. I bet if we asked this audience, what does degrowth mean, you'd get many, many different answers. When I listen to scholars of degrowth, what they're actually advocating for is coming into the donut from both sides at the same time. So I agree with them, that is the goal. The question is, and we can have big discussions about this, can GDP go up or down? I personally believe that high-income countries have not yet shown that they can combine a growing GDP with the decarbonization and the dematerialization we need. So actually, I have a lot aligned with the folks who advocate degrowth. I've just experienced in public debate that when you use a phrase that people don't fully understand or willfully or unintentionally misunderstand, we create confusion. And I don't want to create confusion, I want clarity. So I'd rather focus on the metrics that I was showing, the image I was showing, and talk about transforming that directly.
Okay, and I want to bring our fellow panelists into the conversation. In doing that, though, I want to ask for one final thought from you, Kate, and that is one of the engines of capitalism that has led to the kind of growth that you challenge is, of course, the corporate sector, business, finance, investment. We have here a leading investor in Europe, and so we're going to put you on the spot. What role do you think that finance in particular should play, and then sort of the profit-seeking motive of the way that corporations and financial entities are organized in the West that has driven the heart of industrial capitalism in the last 200 years? What's wrong with that, and what should we ask for differently to come from our financial leaders?
Okay, can I take one step back from finance? Because finance is always investing in something.
Sure.
So I believe we've inherited corporates from the 20th century that have been degenerative by design, right? The take, make, use, lose, the throwaway model has been running down the living planet. And we need businesses that actually are regenerative by design, a completely different restorative model. We've also inherited companies through their design that end up being highly divisive, capturing the returns and value in the hands of a very few. 85% of the world's financial assets are owned by just 10% of people. That's not a world in which all people are going to be able to meet their needs. So we need to go from degenerative to regenerative business and from divisive to distributive business. I believe that companies...
Those are two distinct concepts, right?
And yet highly related.
One to do with circularity, one to do with inequity.
Yes. And we need to do both those dynamics together. So instead of going grow, 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 I say the 21st century metric is this becoming regenerative? Is this becoming distributive? If it is, it's far more likely to be taking us into the donut from both sides. Okay. So it's a high bar, right?
Okay, all right. Well, you've set the bar, but let's put
and can I say, I believe a business can do that, but it's not just about redesigning the business products. It's about redesigning business itself in the deep design of a company's purpose, its governance, its ownership, and its finance.
Right.
So that's transformative.
Okay. So you've laid down the challenge. Marie, I think you're up for this challenge. You've thought a lot about how investment should be done, and you've even argued that the way that venture capital is done, it has to be completely remade, and you've created a fund in that new spirit. Give us a little glimpse of what 2050 your entity does, and maybe give a concrete example of a company you're investing in with maybe a different governance model or a different kind of business model to show us that in the real world, this isn't just a leafy theory from Oxford, but you can actually make this work in real life.
Yeah, thank you. I think the starting point is exactly what Kate said, that what is the purpose of all this? And as an investor, and having invested in the tech world for the last 25 years, and in incredibly successful companies, you can see that when you invest, you're actually not predicting the future, you're shaping the future, which is very different. And so if you put a lot of money to go that way, there's way more chances society is going to go that way. The planet is going to have that impact than if you put it in that direction. So you actually have, it's self-fulfilling, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy almost. It's energy you're putting someplace. So the question that we started 2050 with was, what is the world that we want to live in 2050? What do we want to contribute to? Right? And we decided our mission was to craft a fertile future, meaning that it's a future where everyone can eat enough, eat healthily, where we can all inhabit this earth and produce in a sustainable manner, where we can all take care of our body, minds, and hearts, where we can empower learning and creativity so everyone can contribute to building that fertile future, and where trust is restored within society and economies, so that we can have democracy that function well, we can have trust basically as a basic of human relationships.
I just want to clarify for the audience, you don't run a philanthropy, you're an investment fund, right?
Absolutely.
Because these are lovely words to hear from a family foundation, but surely you're a profit maximizing entity, are you?
Absolutely.
Explain how you can reconcile these really lovely goals. I mean, we all want to come give you a hug right now, but I'm not sure if I want to put my pension for you to invest unless you can prove to us that you can make money on these values.
So why are you saying that? Because what you're seeing is that in all these goals, we're really far away. What I can tell you is that every time I tell that goal to anyone, he's like, I want that future too. Yeah. No one tells me, well, no ways. Were you kidding? I don't want to live there. And the problem is, if you look at the big problems that are preventing us from going there, there's actually huge economic opportunities. I mean, we all need to be fed in the future. We all need to be healthy. And it's absolutely not the way the world is going. Today's food system is not going to feed 10 billion people in 2050, for sure. If you look at the health of people, it's going downwards. In the US in the first place, the mental health of youth, etc. These are huge business opportunities. And so the question is, how do we identify the ones that are the biggest and the most urgent to solve? And so we rely on science to do that. Because if you look in a classic way of investing into past historical data, we're only reproducing the past and not solving the problems we're creating.
Make it concrete. Give us an example of a company that's in your portfolio.
Company, we have the CO2 emissions problem. Okay. We all know, I mean, we knew after looking into science that everyone's focusing on decreasing emission, but there's something that's even, I'm not going to say more important because we need to do the both, but more impactful because it has a compounding effect, is to restore nature's capacity to store carbon. And there's 4 natural carbon sinks. First one is the soil, second is the ocean, third one is the forest, last one is mineral rocks. So we have mineral rocks that are consisting of 80% of the Earth mantle, super common, that have a natural capacity to store CO2, contact to air. So this company is called Pebble. It's based in Stockholm. And what it's doing is that you take olivine or basalt, like really common rocks, out of the ground, and then you make them into an industrial process where you put CO2 waste from industry. Compounding out of that, you get clinker, a new type of material, which can replace clinker in the fabrication of cement. So in the end chain, what you get is cement that is storing CO2 in the process instead of emitting CO2 during production.
This is huge in several ways, right? I mean, many of you will know cement alone accounts for something like 7% of all anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, right? This is a massive industry which you can tackle, but you're finding a double benefit in the way you're doing it.
Exactly. With a double business model, because people are paying to store CO2 and also to buy the materials. Right. And we know, when you look at the cement industry, that price of Portland cement, classic cement, is rising high because of energy costs and all that, and that our product is going to be a lot cheaper because it's energy efficient. It's producing energy through the process.
Right.
So it's a huge economic opportunity on top of being really great for the planet. And so we never talk about degrowth or impact or whatever. We talk about alignment. How can we align business interests together with society's interests and planet interests? Because there's no reason we cannot achieve, and Pebble is a great example of that, to do the three things at the same time.
So that's I mean, it's a terrific example, right? A round of applause. And innovation, again, is one of the great opportunities when you find these sweet spots. But I think there's something also interesting about that company, if I remember correctly. You also have some interesting governance around how you think about that. Can you tell us about that? Because that gets a little bit to the relationship between your two ideas of the purpose of a company and how it should be run. So tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely, and same thing again to the purpose. You know, Pebble is doing all these great things, but if in the articles of association it just says we're here to maximize profit, it's the same thing as maximizing GDP, right? And so you bring all these people together, the team, the shareholders, the customer, and you're only here just
if they're slashing CO2 emissions, it's not a bad thing for those guys to make a profit, though, right? There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. So you need to do both, but you need to say it. So there's a common understanding that we're here to do both. So we're here to maximize profit and to restore nature. So the mission is to restore nature's CO2 balance by 1 gigaton in the next 20 years. So that's the mission, and we put it in the bylaws. And when we said, you know, or the articles of association, and when we talked to the Swedish lawyer and said we wanted to be clear that this is what we're all here together, and that the board is also responsible not only on financial KPIs, but also on like mission KPIs and environmental and social. Well, the lawyer said, I don't know if we can do that. And he looked and he came back and said, well, there's actually nothing in Swedish law that prevents us from doing it. And so we just did it, right? So it's just like you put the mission, and it's very clear, and you follow at the board level that you're not only, of course, financial KPIs, business KPIs, you know, all this classic stuff, but you add on top of that all the mission KPIs, the CO2 that is stored, etc.
And can I ask you, did anything like carbon pricing, carbon taxes, any kind of regulations or policies in Europe play a role in helping make that business model more viable than it might be in other parts of the world where they don't have these kinds of policies?
Yes, but it's putting the business at risk if you only rely on that. So the key question for a company like Pebble is how do you cross the valley of death? So valley of death for these type of company is the funding of the first of a kind plant. Because if you need, so it's huge capex investment or pretty big, and when you go see the bankers and you say, I want, I don't know, 80 million to fund my plant, and they say, okay, what's the result of the first plant? And you're, well, it's actually the first plant, so it doesn't really match. And so we know, and we did this through this kind of alignment method we identify that actually we need to have offtake agreements to do that with very big players. And so for the Series A, we deliberately went to get strategic investors at the cap table, in the cap table. So we have Holcim, which is the biggest cement manufacturer in Europe. We have Goldbeck family, which is here in Germany, pretty close back to Munich, which is also the molder of the cement. And we got Amazon Climate Pledge, which has committed to use the Pebble material to build their data centers in Europe. And so we align in interest the whole value chain because it's a big, it's an oligopoly, you have big players, and so Holcim is the one who's leading the kind of certification of the new type of materials at the European Commission level. So you build the interest of the whole value chain to make that happen so everyone can be happy and it actually can shift.
Great. Well, we're just running out of time. Kate, a word back to you. Externalities, pricing. A lot of these things are external to the market framework. How far can we get with proper addressing of carbon or any of the other environmental externalities that touch on planetary boundaries? How much would you advocate those?
Well, that's why I think we need regulation. We need to understand the planetary boundaries. We need to set ourselves limits through design. So I hope that it will not be too long before carbon releasing cement is just why would we allow that, right? It becomes defunct because we can make carbon-absorbing cement. I also think, I really like the example you gave in Sweden that they added the environmental into the mission. I hope we will get to the point of not saying we'll maximize returns and do the environmental, but that we have a commitment to the environmental and we will deliver sufficient returns. Because why should investors get the maximum when the planet is burning? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
We need to get the priorities in the right order.
Well, okay. I will give that as the last word by just adding one tiny thought. As we all contemplate the joys of donut economics, please spare a thought for externalities, pricing, and regulation as discussed as maybe the sprinkles on that donut that might help the world get towards the vision you have. Please join Kate for the circus at 5 o'clock upstairs. It'd be a lot of fun and very educational. And please thank both my panelists for wonderful contributions. Thank you.